Uncle Doug.
Uncle Mark.
We have a very special couple guests on the show today.
Indeed.
Who are also listeners, which is extremely cool, which is a bit of a pickle for them because our guests today are not supposed to be listening to us at all. What? And special guests, can you tell us why you aren't supposed to be listening to our show?
Well, you see, we are missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's right.
My favorite name, we're Mormon missionaries.
Yeah, we have current Mormon missionaries on the show, you guys.
Yeah, we are behind the wire.
We are inside the wire, and the fact that there are missionaries out in the field listening to our show gives me life. So we've got Elder A and Elder B here, and they are in an undisclosed location, toiling in the fields that are white. And via methods that we won't ask them to disclose here on access on the show, they have access to the devil's internet. And I want to credit our friend Bryce Blankenagel for connecting us to Elder A and B versus his Glass Box podcast. I heard you guys on there the other day, and it blew my mind. And we're so happy to have you on the How To Heretic. So, guys, when Elder A, I certainly heard you talking about this. You lost your faith on your mission. And before you tell us how, can you tell us what sort of Mormon and what sort of missionary you were before that?
I mean, I definitely wasn't the best. Before my mission, you could say I was kind of one of those kids who was kind of believing because, you know, parents are like, go to church every week, go to Mutual, get your Eagle Scout type thing.
Yeah.
And then I guess I kind of had a testimony just because that's all I really knew.
So you did all that stuff. You were an Eagle
yeah.
Scout. You went to seminary and all that stuff.
Yep. Graduated seminary, all that. And I guess I kind of had a testimony or else I wouldn't have left at all, you know?
Right.
But the MTC is really kind of where I guess my testimony grew. I mean, they put you in a place and have you listen to church doctrine for 9 hours a day and try teaching it and telling you the whole time that you're feeling the Spirit, you're going to eventually, quote unquote, feel that Spirit or want to feel it so much you'll trick yourself into feeling the Spirit, you know?
Sure, you're oversaturated. You're overstimulated with nothing but affirming information.
Well, and then
Definitely.
I think for Elder A and B, I think you could affirm this. There's almost like a competition in the MTC, right? Like,
oh yeah,
everybody's trying to kind of out.
Who has the most spiritual story?
Yes, everybody's trying to out testimony each other, and it's you wake up, you start praying.
Oh yeah.
You go to classes for 9 hours a day. You pray before breakfast. You pray before lunch. You pray before dinner. You pray like 15 other times. And if you come out of that without having some kind of a testimony, everyone around you is like, "What happened? What's wrong with this person?"
Yep.
Yeah. So you went out into the mission field and you basically had cobbled together some kind of testimony, and you'd convinced yourself you could make it work. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Basically, I got to the mission field really excited, ready to work. You know, I'm gonna go preach, baptize, harvest the field. You know, all that good stuff. Yeah.
And then what happens? Something changed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of was a gradual change, then a sudden change. It was like a slope to the cliff, you know? Because, like,
Yeah.
I got to my first area with my trainer, and he wasn't as hard of a missionary, that I wanted to be. And so I remember my trainer, I got mad at him. This is just kind of to prove how much I kind of had believed back then, how much I really believed back then. I got there, and my trainer, he wouldn't wake up at 6:30, and I was really mad at him for that. And then like a month into us being together, he did the unthinkable and downloaded a YouTube video onto his phone at the library. And I almost called our mission president over it.
Oh my God.
I didn't, luckily, but I really was close to it.
Well, and for people who don't know, and this kind of speaks to the predicament that you guys are in right now, for people that don't come from the Mormon experience, it is very snitch based, right? And the mission is the most snitch based part of Mormonism. Like you're there to really spy on each other, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the whole reason why they put us together in Paris.
That's right.
Yeah.
So walk us through. You were the gung ho greenhorn who was.
Oh yes.
I can't imagine how annoying you were to your trainer.
I felt so bad, and I served around him again near the end of his mission, and that was after I had kind of lost my faith, and I had definitely chilled out as a missionary because of that, and we became pretty good friends after that.
Sure.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I'd repented of my sins.
So what happened to challenge your faith other than seeing him download a YouTube video?
I guess really just the whole culture of being a missionary is the church hiding information from you about the history, going door to door and having people bring up that information. You try to sell them on the Book of Mormon, but they'll hit you with some quote unquote anti-Mormon doctrine. Oh, Brigham Young was a polygamist. No, terrible. You can't say that. You're not allowed. That's not true. We don't do that type thing.
Right.
I guess the first real encounter I had with church history was a guy in the same area where someone else gave me the CES letter. I'll get to that in a second. We went over to his place for a lesson, and he had set out chairs. He was a really, really believing Christian. I think Baptist. I'm not sure. He'd set out like pamphlets, and inside those pamphlets, it had different church teachings like the Adam God theory, and then the blood atonement and stuff like that. And we saw that, and we basically just ran, me and my companion. Right, man, I hate that everyone just tries to anti us all the time, you know.
Right.
And then I get another companion. I'm still in that same area, and we're tracking actually around that guy, like one neighborhood over, and knock on someone's door, and we start to give our spiel. You know, we're the missionaries from the Church of Jesus, blah, 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 blah. Come and join our church and give us 10% of your money. Right. And he's like, oh, you guys are Mormon missionaries here. I have some questions I want you guys to answer. And he walks back into his house for a second, and he goes and he grabs a copy of the CES letter. And that's something that I had heard about. Just kind of, I've heard the name. I didn't really know what it was.
And for sorry, I'll interrupt you for 1 sec, Elder. For non-Mormon listeners, the CES letter, and we'll include a link to it in the show notes here, is it's kind of like Martin Luther's 99 Theses, right? It's a faithful Mormon an ex-missionary, like did a mission like these guys, had some questions about the provenance of the Book of Mormon and early church history, and had a family relative prompt him to write a letter to a church education service person, right, Doug?
System. Yeah, church education system. And it was the president he wrote the letter to the president, Jeremy Runnels. Yeah. And this letter is basically asking questions about a lot of very problematic things in Mormonism, especially early Mormonism.
A lot of plagiarism in the Book of Mormon. Yeah. And so he wrote this in an really believing, earnest attempt to get some answers, and he never got one. So that's what the CES letter is, and it's available online. We'll include it in the show notes. But anyway, sorry, continue, guys.
No, that's all good. So he gave us that copy of the CES letter, and just kind of out of, I guess, we didn't want to look like we were rejecting his gift to us because we had just gave him a copy of the Book of Mormon, and so we took it and we.
It's just manners. It's just manners, yeah.
And we put it in our bag, and we finished tracking the street, and we get back to the apartment, and we open it up, and we see really kind of what it is, and I'm really intrigued. Like, I kind of want to read this. What's so bad about it, you know? And my companion's just like, throw it away. We don't need that. Throw it away. And so I threw it away. And then he goes to study, and I go and grab it, and I pick it back up, and I read it.
Ooh.
And that was kind of where I really started to lose my faith a lot. I remember reading through that, and because it really drops a lot of bombshells. It's blunt and to the point, and talks so much about church history and uses the church to do it.
Right.
That was kind of like the key point. That I read through the CES letter, and the way it just put the different things that I had heard into perspective and used the church's own sources and links against it. Kind of
right. So it's very hard to tar it as anti, which is just a term Mormons use for anything that is not absolutely orthodox information.
Yeah. And so it's like these things are literally on my phone in the Gospel Library app. Like, that's kind of crazy. That next day after I had read through that and I was still trying to process it, I remember being such a weird day because I just was so out of it mentally. My whole world had kind of collapsed, and I just remember that feeling. I can't even describe it. I just had such a sunken feeling to me that whole day. Like, what am I gonna do? You know? And
so you read it all in one night, and then the
Yeah.
next day you just had to go about missionary business as usual.
Yep, basically.
Oh,
And
man.
and just so our listeners understand the lonely place you're in, or you were in, Elder A, is that you if you were to go to your mission president, who is the person you're supposed to go to with troubles and problems and concerns, if you were to say to him, "Hey, I read the CES letter," and you would be in colossal trouble, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you couldn't write home, you couldn't talk to your companion about it. You couldn't talk to your mission president. You had to live in your own head with this, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, how lonely was that?
It was definitely a hard couple weeks processing it. I did have one awesome friend back home who I was able to get in contact with and talk to a little bit about it. And he was the person who sent me a device that I was able to access the internet with later. So that was nice of him.
Interesting.
He definitely has helped my faith transition a lot because of that.
Awesome. Awesome.
And so, yeah, I read through that. I went about kind of being a normal missionary for the next few weeks. And then I got that device and I started to research on my own a little bit more in depth of the things that the CES letter claims.
Right. And sorry, I'll interrupt you one other second. So again, we have a lot of non-Mormon listeners who may not understand what a blackout you guys live in, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have access to the internet. You don't have access to email for the most part, right? You are not supposed to do anything but be a missionary, not read newspapers, not watch television or movies, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct?
Nothing.
Yes. It's to the point where, like, we have phones because, I mean, we live in a modern world and we need to have a device to contact people with, but they're locked down so much that you can't even access a video that your family sends you through Google Hangouts.
Right.
Wow.
Like for your friend to send you this device, completely opened the universe to you.
Oh yeah, it was nice. I got to watch movies. Ooh. Started developing a quote unquote sleep disorder.
Because you were up till 5 a.m. watching movies and reading shit.
The only free time, that and baths.
Right.
I love what you said on the other podcast about how you're going to have to feign surprise when you watch Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, that was the first movie I watched. My friend had bought it on Amazon, and so he let me use his login and watch it.
That must have blown your mind after being in the media desert for however long.
It was amazing.
So, and Elder B, we want to kind of get to, your story and then how the two of you found each other, which is, to my mind, the most remarkable part of this story. But, Elder A, once you came to this realization, you're like, okay, I don't believe this stuff. If that's the place you got to, was there any consideration in saying, I'm done, I'm going home? Or did you, or did you decide, well, obviously you decided you had to stay. So was there a moment where you thought about throwing in the towel?
Definitely. I definitely hit that point where I'm like, I really don't believe this anymore. And I thought about going home, but I thought about my mom and my dad, and they are
stalwart
fanatics.
Yeah, they are insane.
Fanatics, you'd say.
Yeah, my mom is like the type of person who goes above and beyond to research things about the gospel and try to like bring it, like things like Heavenly Mother and like the deeper doctrines that makes her feel so spiritual anyways. To the point where, and she's always been this way. She's just very controlling and very controlling about about her kids. She's told us, me and my siblings on multiple occasions, you're mine until you're 26 or married.
Oh my God.
Wow.
because
Wow.
that's when we're off of her health insurance, she says.
Jesus. So
Yeah.
you're better off staying out there.
I really am, honestly. Like,
That's so fucked.
yeah, that and a couple other reasons for staying out. Yeah, it gives me enough motivation to keep acting.
Can I ask how far along you guys are in general terms? If you just want to give me, do you have half a year left, 3/4 of a year?
I'm on the downward stretch, around-ish the half-year mark left.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm near the end. Close
Nice.
to the end. Yeah.
You can smell the barn. You're almost done.
Home stretch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's got to be some relief.
Yeah.
Definitely is.
So Elder B, is your story somewhat similar to Elder A's in as far as like you had faith when you were there and you lost it in the field?
Well, no. My grandparents, they offer a lot of stuff to their grandkids to go out. So I did, and I got a bit of a testimony in the MTC, but that died pretty quick. And then I've just been faking it for a long time.
So basically what you're saying is you're for sale.
Basically, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, everybody's for sale. We're just haggling over the price, guys. Come on.
And I got a good price, so I'm all right.
If it's not a pair of jet skis, then I think you sold yourself short.
So you guys got crazy. You guys came to this this faith crisis separately, but is that correct? But somehow you ended up together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that is crazy. The odds. So either that is crazy long odds, or there are more missionaries like you than you think.
Well, that's the thing. Is not only did you end up together, but I would assume that there are many missionaries who've lost their faith, and even that are companions, but just can't ever say it, right? Like the danger of exposing yourself. Terrifying, right?
Terrifying, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this a little bit on the Glassbox podcast.
Yeah.
But that's something that I had kind of learned how to subtly do with some of my past companions, just to kind of judge where they're at.
Yeah, I remember you said something like, why don't we read up on the first vision? And, there's more versions of the first vision. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
But Elder B is the first one that you got the desired response out of. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was funny because we were talking about the Come Follow Me, that the Book of Mormon Come Follow Me, and the typo that they printed in the print versions. Do you guys know anything about that?
I for some reason I think I do, but remind me.
So in the first print versions of the Come Follow Me for the Book of Mormon, obviously the Book of Mormon has a lot of stuff in there that's not okay. Like the White and Delight sub in Second Nephi is the example that I'm trying to bring up. And so during that portion of the Book of Mormon, when they're teaching about it in the Come Follow Me, they have a paragraph in Come Follow Me, the printed version, that says basically the Lord cursed them with dark skin because they were wicked. It basically says that. I could go pull it up if you guys want me to.
It sounds less like a typo than a Freudian slip.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Well, they say it's a typo. And so
less like a typo than doctrine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So you guys get put together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Elder A, I seem to remember you saying that you had your suspicions about Elder B.
Yeah.
From before you guys were put together. So what was that suspicion? And then when did you just kind of like? How did you get to that moment where one of you said to the other, "Guess what, dude"?
Day one.
It was like,
really?
Wow!
It was day one actually. It's funny because before we were companions, we served around each other, and they had exchanges with us, and we were all together in an apartment, and we stayed up till 5 just talking about a bunch of different stuff. And from that I could kind of tell, I feel like if I were to be put with him, I would be able to either A, convince him to stop believing, or B, he already is no longer believing.
Right.
And so we got together, we started talking about that. And I think just at one point, Elder B turns to me and is like, "So, do you even believe in this?" And I was kind of shocked. And I was like, not really.
And then we just went downhill from there.
And
You guys must have been so relieved
Oh my
to
goodness.
finally have somebody to say something to, right?
oh yeah,
It was glorious.
It was
Glorious, exactly.
so nice.
It was a spiritual experience.
Definitely the spirit was involved in us getting together. I mean, the mission president prayed over who he should put together, and he put us together. So, I mean,
And he was right.
he was right.
And he was totally right. So I want to talk for a second about, I sent you guys a couple links beforehand. One was to our segment in episode 50 about blood atonement. And one was a sillier one in episode 132 about the Moon Quakers. And I just want to have a quick discussion about what Mormon missionaries, we've already touched on it a bit, what Mormon missionaries really know about the church before they're sent out to sell this thing. And obviously, Elder A and I imagine Elder B, you didn't really know any of the stuff in the CES letter.
None of it.
None of it. And things like, as you mentioned, Elder A, white and delightsome, like the church's horrendous history involving race relations that really only technically, and I'm using air quotes to the point I'm dislocating my fingers, ended in 1978. But you guys, did you know anything about that?
I did not.
Anything about that?
Nothing.
No,
Right.
we knew nothing about those kind of things.
Wow.
And I gotta say, like, my mission predated the internet, and that makes me sound very old, but the internet isn't that old, so don't judge me.
Whatever, dude.
So there were people who knew anti-Mormon stuff, and they would spring it on us, but I can't imagine what it must be like in the age of the internet, in the wake of the South Park episode, and you know what I mean? Like, to go out there and try and talk to people about the gospel, knowing that they probably know more about actual church history than most missionaries. How hard is that?
Yeah, I've definitely seen myself and other missionaries struggle with that a lot, especially when going out and proselyting and going door-to-door tracting. I've had companions who get really frustrated at just the amount of anti-Mormon doctrine is brought up to us while we are going door-to-door. Because
Right.
almost every person that knows about the church will bring something about like that up. It's like, oh, you guys are them polygamists, right? Or or just so many different things about the church history that
You can't teach those people.
so many things about church history that we just don't know. We've never been taught about. We have never been taught how to answer these questions.
That's so crazy to me. Like, it's handicapping you. You did not know that Brigham Young was a polygamist.
No.
That's just crazy.
It's insane.
Okay, so let's move forward. You guys have found each other.
Yeah.
And you've been stuck basically in the apartment, I assume, during COVID. And so that's lifting. You guys aren't going to be together forever. That's just the way it works in the mission.
Sadly.
I guess the question is, you're going to go home eventually, both of you. You're going to have to go home. You're going to have to do your homecoming, where you're going to have to get up in front of everybody in the ward and everybody you know.
Oh man,
and bear your testimony. I mean, have you guys given a lot of thought to like what's the life after the mission and how you're going to navigate that?
No, not really. It's stressful enough out here that you just need to take it one day at a time just to try to function.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I completely get it. And it's kind of, you guys are kind of behind enemy lines. Not that Mormons are technically enemies, but it's that's probably the closest analogy I can come up with, is you're kind of spies behind enemy lines in World War II, right? And you just got to get through it. And I think whatever you have to do to get through the day to day is just completely fine. One thing I did want to ask you guys too is, I have it on pretty good authority that you are not the only active missionaries who are listening to this show.
Definitely not.
And I would like to ask you guys what you would say to anybody else who might be listening, who's maybe not as lucky as you two have been to find each other, right? Like, what would you say to those people to help them get through?
Well, I mean, if they're in my position and stuck where they have to stay out and finish, like I kind of am,
Yeah.
I would definitely just advise them to. I mean, that's a tricky question. There's so many different things. It just depends on your companion, really.
Sure.
I think really just try to match the level of obedience that your companion has. Because if your companion is someone who just doesn't care very much and still believes, you can still have a lot of fun with that companion. But if you have a companion who is super go
obedient,
you just kind of gotta just get through it. You just gotta do it, and you can try to soften them up a little bit, but from my experience, you just kind of gotta put your head down and get through that couple transfers with that crappy companion.
Right. And you had mentioned that you had a friend who sent you a device, which kind of gave you the window to the world that made your life out there better and saner. Would you recommend active missionaries reaching out to that friend of theirs out there? I would venture a lot of them have that friend.
Yeah.
And seeing if they can hook them up.
Definitely. It just depends on if you want to do that. Yeah. I think if you feel like you can hide it well enough, because that's really what it's all about. It's about not getting caught and being able to finish out your mission for whatever reason you have to finish it. Because doing something like that is risky, because if you do get caught, you'll get sent home for it.
Right. And again, for non-Mormon listeners, the familial and societal pressure that is on these guys and girls to go out, to serve with honor, to return with honor, and to make the whole community proud is intense.
Fair.
And a lot of times resources are tied into that. So do you want to go to college? Do you want to have a car, et cetera, et cetera? So there's an intense amount of pressure and coercion brought on people like Elder A, who maybe didn't want to go in the first place. So that's, people have a lot of reasons for staying out and sticking with it, even if it's not really working for them. Yeah.
But there's also the other side of the coin, I guess, where having someone send you out a device isn't your only option. If you do want to have access to the outside world, as we've already kind of talked about this over Twitter. We tweeted back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was able to find a way to get through the church's software that locks down the phones. And so if any missionary out there wants to have me walk them through that over email, they can just email me.
Yeah, go ahead and say.
At brokenmissionary@gmail.com. It's really kind of simple. And I'd be happy to help as long as you actually are a missionary.
Yeah, and that's not the first time I've heard that happening, that their missionaries are cracking their devices to get past the firewall. So, well, guys, this has been great. I really hope you take care, not only because you're kind of living behind enemy lines, but because of this stupid pandemic. And you're not home where you should be in quarantine, but out in some shitty apartment somewhere. So please take care and be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I went through what you guys are going through. I was home. I was in an apartment. You know what I mean? Like I kind of had some space.
Yeah.
I could talk to people. I could read books. I could go, watch TV or whatever. So I just got to say, I'm very, very impressed, you guys. I can't imagine the psychological and emotional stress you must be under, having to not just maintain your secret, but to also have to put on an act.
Yeah.
In order to maintain that secret. And I just, I wish you guys all the best, and just know that, it gets better.
Yeah.
You'll be home. You'll be home one day and you'll be able to do what you need to do, but just hang in there, guys.
And Elder A, you'll be 26 someday, so it'll be clear sailing after that. So,
hey, you never know.
You never know. Well, guys, thanks so much. Please take care, and we'll talk to you another time.
All right.
All right. Talk to you then. Bye.